I remember it like it was yesterday. The year was 2007. The first iPhone had just released, Kanye West dropped Graduation, and Superbad had just came out.
This isn't terrible. I mean, it's up to you, Fogel. This guy's either gonna think, here's another kid with a fake ID, or here's McLovin, the 25-year-old Hawaiian organ donor.
I was 18 years old and had a job at my local GameStop. A game by the name of Mass Effect was set to release on November 16th. A new sci-fi action RPG from BioWare, the studio that brought us KOTOR and Jade Empire, had us buzzing. But what made it even better was that we found out it was not only going to be a trilogy of games, but that a majority of your decisions made in the first game would carry over and have a drastic impact on the second and third games. At the time, the only game I'd ever played that did something similar was an RPG by the name of Golden Sun on the Game Boy Advance. To this day, the only other series I've ever seen do this is The Witcher. The idea of building a character whose decisions could impact and change the future games in the series was just so appealing to me that I had to have it. The day arrived and we all picked up our copies during the midnight release and ran home to play them. The next day at work, we talked about what we had been up to on our playthroughs. One of my coworkers mentioned to me how he kicked off the Hanner on the Citadel who was preaching about his religion, only to reload his save file because he felt bad about it. I talked about how I decided to let him speak his mind by purchasing a permit for him. My coworker told me that he ended up convincing the CSEC officer to leave the Hanner alone because he had leveled his charm so high up that he was given an extra dialogue option. We also couldn't shut up about the characters in the game. Most of us took the chance to recruit everyone, but some people chose the route of leaving some behind. While I've played games where characters could die, I don't think I can recall a game that let you say no to party members from joining. There were games that had secret ones that you could find, like Yuffie and Vincent in Final Fantasy VII, but nothing that allowed you to flat out deny entry to your adventure.
I don't want you on this mission. I'll be here if you change your mind.
As I wrote this script, I can see that the conversations I've had about Mass Effect always boiled down to the characters and the choices that we made on our playthroughs. I think it's the best quality of the game. Don't get me wrong. At the time, the gameplay was fun. It was a third-person shooter reminiscent of Gears of War. Depending on the class you pick, you'd have biotic and tech powers that you could use, which were pretty much the Mass Effect equivalent of magic. You could also go around and explore the various planets in the galaxy, but that was kinda tedious. The Mako, which allowed you to travel around the planets, moved around like a kid in a jump house with little to no self-control. The amount of times that thing would flip over, refuse to drive up terrain, and also explode to a random Thresher Maw attack made it memorable in a bad way. At the end, the best parts about Mass Effect truly were the story, the characters, and the decisions you made along the way. Eventually, Mass Effect 2 and 3 released in 2010 and 2012 respectively, and the trilogy came to what was considered a controversial end, which we can talk about when I make my video essay for Mass Effect 3. Even with that, it's still considered one of the best game trilogies of all time, but up until recently, the only way to play these games were if you had an Xbox 360, PS3, or PC. For a while, fans had begged for a next-gen port, or better yet, a remaster of the games on modern consoles. I was one of those fans. Thinking about creating a brand new Shepard and going through all three of the games again, weaving a new story set off my serotonin. Something that rarely happens these days. Anyways, on November 7, 2020, our wish was granted. EA announced that a completely remastered collection called the Legendary Edition would be released on May 14, 2021 for PC, PS4, and Xbox One. Of course, the collection would include higher resolution graphics, and it would also have some massive gameplay improvements to the first Mass Effect. Hearing this announcement filled me with so much joy. The day it finally arrived, I booted up Steam, loaded up my Steam wallet, bought the damn thing, and patiently waited for it to download and install. Once the process was done, I booted up the collection, selected Mass Effect 1, prepared myself for the journey ahead. Now, Mass Effect is a 14-year-old game. As much as I was excited for this remaster, I did sit and wonder, is this all just capitalizing on my feelings of nostalgia? Because let me tell y'all, when you take some of the games of the past and play them today, they really don't hold up that well. So all of this led me to the question, is Mass Effect still a good game 14 years later? And today, I'm going to give you all that answer. So the first thing I'd like to address are the visuals and gameplay. From the skin tones to the facial shapes, every single character in the game has been revamped. The textures look much more realistic, and the environments are cleaner thanks to better textures and lighting. Now, you'd think with all the higher resolution textures and resources, the game would take a lot longer to load, but it's quite the opposite. Loading times are lightning fast and non-existent at some points. It's most apparent during the elevator rides in the Citadel. In the past, you'd hear conversations between crewmates and news broadcasts of your escapades throughout the galaxy, and you'd still be sitting there for a good minute waiting for the damn elevator ride to end. In the Legendary Edition, you step in, and in a matter of seconds, you're given the option to skip the dialogue and broadcast and end the ride at your destination. This is a fantastic change, but I will say it's worth staying along for the ride the first few times to hear the different interactions between crewmates as well as the news broadcasts, which are directly impacted by some of the choices you make, as well as the missions and side quests you undertake.
Normal excavations. I would prefer lengthier studies and fewer explosions.
It's good for you. A nice explosion every now and then keeps the mind sharp.
Now that I've gotten the visuals out of the way, let's talk about the gameplay. Back in 07, third-person cover shooters were a big thing. Gears of War pretty much set up the future for that genre moving forward. Mass Effect did its best to deliver a shooter experience like that, but didn't come without its flaws. Going into cover felt sticky sometimes, and I'd have many moments where the game just wouldn't react to me trying to get into cover that I'd die an unnecessary death. The gunplay was also a bit wonky. The handling and recoil of the weapons were weird, and while a part of it was based off of the points you have in weapon skills, a lot of it truly felt like random luck. Trying to use your biotic and tech powers was tricky due to the really clunky interface, and your squad mates, good luck having them do anything that you want. I can't even count the amount of times my crewmates ignored my orders only to walk right into the face of death. But BioWare learned from this experience, and with the Legendary Edition, they took those lessons and refined it for Mass Effect 1. The guns have way better handling. Using your biotic and tech abilities is a walk in the park thanks to the upgraded UI. Hell, you can actually let your squad have full control over their own skills and actions, and they'll use them properly. To top it off, it didn't matter which class you decided to choose. Every class could use every weapon available to them. Of course, depending on your class, you could specialize in some of them for increased damage and perks. Now, I've saved the best gameplay improvement for last because I felt this one was a complete game changer. The leveling system got a complete overhaul. In the original Mass Effect, the level cap was 60, but you couldn't hit that on your first playthrough because you were locked out at level 50. In the Legendary Edition, you have no lockout on your first playthrough. To top it off, gaining XP from quests and enemies was much better and no longer felt like a grind, and you didn't feel drastically underpowered by the time you reached the grand finale of the game. Thanks to all of these drastic performance improvements, the game is much better 14 years later. I could never go back and play the original because all of these improvements showed me how flawed the original was. But now that I've gotten the gameplay and visual stuff out of the way, it's time to talk about the thing that hasn't changed 14 years later, and that's the story. Now, I'd like to state that I'm going to do my best to avoid spoilers right now because I personally feel that Mass Effect is one of the best stories that involves a few wild twists and turns. But if you're someone who's looking to have zero spoilers whatsoever, you may want to skip over this portion of the video. In 2021, Shepard is still an amazing protagonist that you get to shape throughout the entire game. Starting with character creation, you get to choose one of 3 simple backstories for your Shepard: Spacer, Earthborn, and Colonist. Each one of these backstories gives you a slight boost in Paragon or Renegade points, as well as a unique story quest acknowledging Shepard's background. Shepard's story in Mass Effect involves him becoming the first human Spectre. Spectres are a covert organization ran by the Citadel Council. They get to work above the law, and their goal is to keep the galaxy protected by any means necessary. Players who choose the Renegade route can truly take advantage and abuse this power to make some very questionable and harsh decisions in the name of galactic security.
I've had enough of your snide insinuations.
Shepard's goal is to stop a rogue Turian Spectre by the name of Saren. At first, it seems as though he's simply gone mad with power and is taking the role of any means necessary too far. But by the end of the game, you realize he's working towards a much more sinister plan than you could ever imagine. On your journey to stop Saren, Shepard will be joined by up to 6 crewmates. Those crewmates are Kaidan Alenko, Ashley Williams, Garrus Valkyrian, Erdnot Rex, Tali, and last, but most certainly not least, is Dr. Liara Sioni. Each one of these crewmates has a deep backstory, and you can choose to hold conversations with each one of them before and after missions. And they all bring specific strengths and abilities combat-wise. And they all have unique conversations with each other when you bring them along. For some of the major story missions, they can even have special dialogue options. What's even more unique about this is you have the option to flat out reject some of them from joining your party, and without going deep into spoilers, some of them can even die. This is huge given the fact that your save carries over into Mass Effect 2, which means you can drastically change how some of the events go down in the game. When it comes to the main storyline, you even have the ability to choose when and where you go. After you finish the events at the Citadel, you're given 3 planets to explore: Therium, Pharos, and Noveria. You can tackle them in any order you want. Therium is actually where you go to recruit Liara. You can choose to do it first to have her right away, or you can choose to save it for last. Saving it for last even gives you a different dialogue with Liara.
Are you real? Oh no, don't be stupid, Liara. Humans do not come here, you're hallucinating.
On Noveria, your job is to get to Peak 15. When you arrive at Port Hashan, you're actually denied access to Peak 15 unless you can get a garage pass. You are loaded with options on how to get this pass. There's a quick and easy route. There's a longer route that involves you helping an individual by the name of Lorik Quinn, who's investigating some deep corruption in Port Hashan. That route will make you stay at Port Hashan longer, but you'll also be rewarded with a deeper story and a chance to take down a terrible person. On Pharos, you arrive at a rundown settlement called Zoo's Hope to investigate a Geth attack. While you arrive, you see that the citizens of Zoo's Hope are in bad shape. They're struggling to get food, they have no access to clean water, and are loaded with other problems. Those who want to go the Paragon route can actually take the time to assist each and every one of them before tackling the main objective. Those who are playing a Renegade Shepherd can choose to ignore them and focus on the main mission at hand. The freedom of choice Mass Effect gives you is insane. You can play the game twice and still find things that you never did in your first playthrough. Playing through this game again in 2021, I'm still blown away by it. Yes, we've had other games come out that have morality systems like this, such as Red Dead Redemption 2 and The Witcher 3. But the thing about Mass Effect is that it's much older than these games, but thanks to the Legendary Edition, it can still go toe-to-toe with them. But as much as I praise this game, it's not without its flaws. While the Legendary Edition brought a lot of quality of life adjustments, there's still some things that it just couldn't fix 14 years later. The first are the side quests. With the exception of the Citadel and the 3 story planets, the rest of the side quests feel like absolute filler that you simply need to take on to gain experience for your Shepherd. It doesn't help that the planets where you have to go for these quests all feel like copy-paste recolors of the previous, and exploring them is horrible. While they did a lot to improve the controls of the Mako, it's still garbage, and the planets themselves aren't the only thing that feels copy-paste. Every bunker, shelter, headquarters, etc. is literally the same, from the corridors to the staircases to the boxes and the items on the wall. If you've seen one, you've seen them all. Still, as harsh as I am about these flaws, I can't bring myself to let these old issues stop me from enjoying everything else about this game that makes it stellar. So in closing, I'd like to give you the answer to the question that I presented at the start of this video. Is Mass Effect still a good game 14 years later? Yes, but only if you play the Legendary Edition. This is one of the greatest sci-fi stories ever told in a video game. Characters, morality, and decision-making are top-notch. The rest of the game would be weighed down by its flaws that the Legendary Edition took the time to improve upon. Pick up the Legendary Edition, play Mass Effect 1, and prepare yourself for a journey that you will not regret. With all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to like it, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. And I always love interacting with the viewers, so please drop a comment and let me know. Did you play Mass Effect at launch 14 years ago? Is this your first time playing it? Did you choose a Renegade or Paragon route? I'd love to hear about your experiences because no one playthrough is the same. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go boot up Mass Effect 2, transfer my Shepherd in, and go ahead and play the hell out of it so I can make the next video essay for y'all.